Welcome aboard, Giants fans, to episode 77 of Talk is Cheap, our New York Giants podcast right here on NJ.com. I'm Joe Giglio, joined as always by James Cratch and Dan Duggan. They cover the Giants for NJ Advanced Media. They were at MetLife Stadium on Sunday to watch the Giants win again, 17-6 over the Detroit Lions, now 10-4 on the season. The Giants on the doorstep of clinching a playoff spot, the first time they've won double-digit games since 2010. A big day for the Giants. A lot of playoff scenarios to talk about, and a looming two-game road trip here to finish this thing and try to get in the playoffs. James, we'll start with you. Once again, the story is kind of similar, right? I mean, the defense carries the day. The Giants win. There are still questions about what they are and where they're going, but again, they win, and the defense does it in a big fashion.
No, I mean, second straight week they've held a division-leading team in the NFC to under 2 scores. So I think that's a major accomplishment for the defense, and I think the offense made progress. They're not all the way there yet, and I still have my doubts that someday this is all going to explode. They're going to score 35 points and start rolling people, but I thought they were better than they were against the Cowboys. I thought there was some progression made, which is a good thing. Eli Manning was a hell of a lot better, which is exactly what the Giants need. But look, they're 10-4. They're all but in the playoffs now. They got to wrap up the fine details, and I'm sure we'll talk about all the scenarios later, but it's a major accomplishment for this team. After 3 straight losing seasons, 4 years without the playoffs, new head coach, complete offseason renovation, revamped everything, and it looks like it's going to pay off, and they're going to be back in the playoffs for the first time since 2011, which is kind of a long time ago when you think about it.
It is. It's a long time in the NFL, certainly a long time for the Giants, because they had a lot of success early in Eli Manning's career, not so much as of late, but 10-4 now. And Dan, for Sunday, as we do this podcast on a Monday on a short week, the one thing that was different this time, as there's a lot of similarities with all these wins, but the defense carried the day. But this time, not only no JPP, but early in that game, Janoris Jenkins takes the knee to the back, and we don't see him again the rest of the game. And they're doing it without star players here, and the results are the same. I mean, single-digit points for the Lions. I mean, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's really remarkable, especially when you go back to, there was some questions kind of creeped in after that Steelers loss, because it was, you go back that 6-game winning streak, kind of the one asterisk was there wasn't a lot of, quality opponents. Then they played a good team, and you said, oh, maybe, they're not as good as we thought. They lose JPP, and some serious doubts start to creep in, and they've really slammed the door shut on any of those. Like you said, doing it without JPP is one thing. Obviously, Okwara wasn't, quite the force yesterday as he was the first game, but the run defense certainly didn't, miss a step. Kerry Wynn stepped in there and did well. But Jenkins is probably a bigger loss because, that's a guy who, basically takes the opposing number one receiver out of the game, and losing him early in the second quarter, and again, didn't skip a beat. I mean, it's really just impressive how this team has got some depth that I don't think we even realized they had. Guys like Cody Sensabaugh, who weren't even on the roster at the start of the season, he has to step in, or Trevin Wade, guys who were, kind of buried on the depth chart. And obviously DRC stepped up into kind of that number one corner role and had the big pick late. So it's really a testament to sort of the, kind of the character of the team, this next man up. Every team says it, but they've actually, played it out. And again, I keep going back to Spags. I mean, for a guy who's had some really rough years, the last few years as a defensive coordinator, what a job he's done. Obviously, he's got talent, but like we said, they're missing some of the biggest pieces and still rolling along. And these are against good teams and good offenses, and holding them back-to-back to single digits is really impressive.
It is. And you look up now, only 2 teams in the NFL, the Patriots and the Seahawks, have allowed less points. I mean, James, when this season started and we talked about the defense and how they can improve and how good they could be based on the additions they made and compared to last year, I remember us throwing things out like middle of the pack and maybe even, the fringe of the top 10 if, everything went right. But, there's 2 weeks to go in this season, and they are third in the NFL in points allowed. That is something I never could have imagined would happen.
No, I mean, you look at some of the yardage stats, they're kind of low, but I think that was more a product of what happened earlier in the year. They've really gelled, and I don't know what their ranking will be after Week 15, but I think they're definitely a top 5 defense in the league. I think the argument can be made they're playing the best of any defense in the league. And, I had the same thought you had coming in this year, that if they were kind of like middle of the pack, that would be a great improvement from last year, and that would give them a chance to be really successful because the offense, we all assume, would be a top 10 unit again. But things change, and I think this is a team that truly can go in the playoffs thinking we can win with defense and we can go a long way with defense. It's kind of amazing how, I know Dan was on the beat last year, but that defense last year was so bad, and they had so many players out there a lot of times that they're not in the NFL anymore for a reason. But they roll 11 quality starters and more behind them. I mean, Dan's right. The depth of this team has been really shown over the last 2 weeks, and it's been kind of astounding. I mean, I think a couple weeks ago, if you had told us that they're going to lose JPP for the rest of the year and they were going to lose, Janoris Jenkins' status would be kind of unsure, we would have thought, okay, well, that's probably going to tank their chances, but it hasn't. It's somehow made them a better defense, it seems.
It has, and every week they seem to do something that makes it more impressive than the week before. They're losing a guy and still performing. The Giants' defense has been a theme of this year, and of course always a theme of this podcast. Whether it's good, bad, or somewhere in the middle, Dan is Odell Beckham Jr., and the numbers weren't eye-popping on Sunday, but again, he does something that gets everyone talking, the left-handed catch to help seal the game. I mean, every week he does something that either we've never seen before, or it's like we can't not talk about this guy, and you've had a front row seat to watching him. It's just he's just an amazing athlete.
Right, and one of these days, one of these amazing punt returns are going to actually count. I mean, that play was really probably the best play of the game. Obviously, it doesn't show up in the box score, but I mean, just what a play. I mean, he's just so ridiculous with the ball in his hands, and this is again from a guy who said he shouldn't be the punt returner, and still kind of feel that way. I mean, I know it's harder to say that now because every time he touches it, he's pretty much a threat to go to the house. I like how they're doing it more situationally. But so yeah, that alone kind of spoke to his talent. But the one that counts is that one-handed catch. And, we've all seen him make a million one-handed catches, whether it's in warm-ups, practices, or in games. He's obviously done it. But that was kind of a different spin on it because that was a low, hard fastball he had to snag there. And it just shows, kind of all the practice and dedication, pays off. I mean, there was an anecdote that he brushes his teeth with his left hand. He's been doing that forever because he's just trying to build up, his left hand to be as good as right. I mean, if you ever have any question about the guy's dedication, I mean, that says a lot. He's clearly just consumed with being great. I mean, he says it all the time, and comes across a little cocky. But when you're as good as he is, I mean, you can certainly get away with saying those types of things. It just comes through whenever they need to play. It's like I said yesterday. The formula is pretty much, a bunch of defense and a dash of Odell, and that's been enough. Will continue to be enough? I don't know, but it's certainly a formula that's working right now because not only does he make the touchdown, but has the big third down catch on that drive, where it was a great pass by Eli. I'm not going to give all the credit to Odell on that, but it's just like I said, it's a formula that's working, and when you have the best player in the NFL, or arguably the best offensive player in the NFL, that can take you a long way, as we're finding out.
It certainly can. They have a formula right now, and it's funny you mention that because last night, right at the end of the Sunday night game, Collinsworth and Michaels, who I guess will be in Philadelphia Thursday for the Giants-Eagles game, or at least NBC will be there. But they were talking about the Giants and previewing the game, and James, they said right now the Giants, they have the two things you look for, and it's in one spot. A team that's hot going in down the stretch, and a team that's playing really good defense. The Giants are that team right now that has both of those things. The hiccup right now, and I think the conversation among Giants fans this week, heading into the game Thursday, is they have to finish it, and there still are two more games. It's almost like people want the playoffs to just start today. That can't happen yet. And I think the playoff scenario, James, I know you've been locked in a bunker somewhere trying to come up with every single one we could come up with. It's as simple as one more win and they're in, but then there's a whole bunch of other things that could happen, right?
I mean, actually, I'm pretty sure, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure if they tie the Eagles on Thursday night, that will also clinch a playoff berth. So as long as if they leave Philly with a non-losing result, they should be in. But there is a chance, and it's not a great chance, and even if this happened, if the Giants lose out, which, look, I mean, I think at the end of the day, the Giants are rolling, but at Philly on a short week, at Washington, who also might be playing for the playoffs. It's not an easy final two games to end the season. We've been saying this since they announced the schedule. The Giants could very realistically go 0-2 in the last 2 weeks of the season. And if they did that, and I believe the Lions and the Packers finished tied at 10-6, and the Buccaneers win out and finish 10-6, and the Redskins maybe win out and go 10-5-1, the Giants could find themselves on the outside looking in, because when you get into a three-way tiebreaker, they throw out the head-to-head, and they do the tiebreaker based on a triangle. And in that situation, Detroit, even though they lost to the Giants directly, in this scenario, the Packers would have won the NFC North. Even though Detroit lost to the Giants head-to-head, if it's a three-way tie, they go to a different set of tiebreaker rules. That would allow Detroit to win the triangle, and then Tampa would win the tiebreaker over the Giants on conference record, because I believe they're somehow match. Actually, it might not be conference record at this point. No, excuse me, it would. So you can see there's a lot of stuff going on here.
So basically just win on Thursday night, right?
Win or tie on Thursday night, and they're going to the playoffs. So the Giants could make this very, very, very easy on everyone if they just win on Thursday night. But if you don't win on Thursday night, I think things are going to start to tighten a little bit and people are going to get nervous. So the Giants should just take care of business, beat an Eagles team that they should beat on Thursday night and get it out of the way.
Right, and that would end everything. And I believe at that point they would clinch the number 5 spot too? Like their standing would just be set before. Like it's interesting because right now, based on whatever happens against the Eagles, that Week 17 week for you guys and for the team and for the actual kickoff against Washington, it could go from everything on the line to relatively meaningless. Am I reading that right, James?
Yeah, I mean, the league hasn't sent out like the official, rubber stamp of this is the case. But if the Giants beat the Eagles on Thursday night, I mean, I don't see how any other team in the NFL could get to 11 wins. I mean, the Redskins could get to 10-5-1, but the Giants would still have the edge there because they'd have a better winning percentage because they have 11 wins and the Redskins would have 10. So, yeah, I mean, basically the 5th seed's wrapped up. I know some Giants fans are still holding out hope that they're going to somehow win the NFC East. It's a 2% chance. As I wrote on NJ.com on Monday morning, you have a 2.7% chance of someday being on the Price is Right in your life, according to some website I found at 12:30 in the morning. So it's not a great chance to win the NFC East. I know Giants fans, they want to dream about it because that would mean number 1 seed in the NFC and all likelihood, home field advantage, blah, blah, blah. But this Giants team is, if they're going to the playoffs, and they most pretty much are, they're going as a wild card, and it looks like it's going to be the 5 seed. So then it comes who they're going to play. I'd say it looks like it's probably going to be the NFC North winner. I know Dan's thrilled about that potential trip to Green Bay in a couple weeks. But I guess just an outside shot, it could be the South winner. So I think the Giants, the way things look right now, they're going to be the 5 seed. They're probably going to Detroit or Green Bay. So the Giants, my guess is that if it's Detroit, Green Bay, and Sunday Night Football in Week 17, the Giants are going to have to wait until basically midnight to find out who they're going to play in the playoffs that week.
Yeah, and you guys have to wait till midnight to find out where you're going that week. When we look at the game Thursday, not so much the matchup. The Eagles have fallen apart since really the middle of the season. They have played hard the last 2 weeks, though, and almost knocked off the Redskins. We're a play away from knocking off the Ravens. Dan, for you, when you look at this spot, a Thursday night game on the road, division matchup, do you think there should be some concern for Giants fans that they actually lose this game and things get interesting? Or do you think, considering how well they're playing and the Eagles' lack of talent across the offense, that this is going to be the night the Giants have been waiting for years, a moment where they get to go back to the playoffs?
Yeah, well, I mean, first off, I kind of lost track of the Eagles a little bit since it's been a while since the Giants played them. I didn't realize they've lost, 5 straight and 9 of 11. Remember that 3-0 start? That was a long time ago. Yeah, I think there should be some concern. I mean, again, the Giants are playing great defensively and doing enough to win, but I mean, it's not like they're just going out and blowing teams away. And like you said, the Eagles, are playing tough. They played the Giants down to the wire. You know what I mean? Carson Wentz, just throws a little more on the mark. We might be talking about a loss, that game in November at MetLife. So, listen, I think I've said it kind of all along. These types of games, if you're a playoff team, you win them. And the Giants have pretty much won them. They certainly look like a playoff team. This is just one more of those. I mean, this is a team that, sure, they're a rival. Sure, they're going to, come out and play hard. But you beat a 5-9 team to get in the playoffs if you're a playoff team. You don't worry about, James doing all his math on the mirror in his bathroom. I mean, you just win this game and you're in. It's pretty simple. I know it's tough because it's a short week, but it's a short trip. It's only down in Philly. Philly's in the same boat. You played a 1:00 game on Sunday, so pretty much maximum recovery you could really have for a Thursday game. So, it won't be easy. But I think that, again, if you're as good as the Giants look, you find a way to win this game. Probably won't be pretty, but, very rarely, are the Giants games pretty. But I think they'll find a way.
as we, before we get into what could happen and all the doomsday stuff for the next couple of weeks, or, exciting stuff, I think this might be a good time, James, for a minute here, because this will go away quickly. This is probably our only chance to do it. To talk about what the Giants have accomplished right now. I mean, if they somehow miss the playoffs, no one will care about this. And if they do get in, it's going to soon be about how much they can accomplish. But this is the first time they've won double digits since 2010. And like you were saying, they're on the precipice of securing a playoff spot for the first time since 2011. I mean, in this moment right now, we could say it. The Giants have had a very good season, though the next 2 weeks will change the conversation about it. But for right now, as we sit here and do this episode today, James, just thoughts on how much the Giants have accomplished to date.
I think it's been a tremendous season. I don't think you really can ask for much more. I think that you made it. I mean, people forget, like, the Giants only basically, less than a year ago, they made a monumental shift. I mean, they basically told Tom Coughlin, who'd been there for 12 years and won 2 Super Bowls, Tom, it's time. We need a new coach. And, they had kind of I don't want to call it a meandering job search, but, there wasn't any big, name or, sexy, interview they did. And they hired McAdoo. And I think that even as recently as, week 5, I think people were kind of looking at Ben and saying, is this guy in completely over his head as a head coach? And since they lost to the Packers, I think it was the Packers to go to 2-3. I mean, this thing's been kind of rolling now. I mean, they had the hiccup in Pittsburgh, but I think now if you look back on it, that was just kind of bound to happen. And I do think that kind of plays into the final 2 weeks. I'm sure we'll discuss in a second. But no, look, I think the Giants, they were a franchise that was basically irrelevant. And now they're very relevant. They did it in a way that rarely works in the NFL, spending all this money in free agency. They put together a strong draft, which has been an issue for them in recent years. I think that you still look at this roster, I think there's still issues and there's still weak points, but they have put themselves in a position where they're relevant again, they're in the playoff hunt again. And I think more importantly is you project forward, there's a future. When I got on the beat last start of the 2015 season, I mean, there really was no hope. It was just kind of like, this is the team they have, and they're not very good, and they're probably not going to make the playoffs. They came in with all that bravado and optimism in training camp, and you kind of thought, okay, maybe this is like an 8 or 8, 9 or 7 team. But no, they've lived up to it. They're 10-4. They have a chance to be 12-4 if they win these 2 games. I think 11-5 would be a great point for them. I don't think anybody thought they'd win 11 games at the start of the year. I think McAdoo's first year has been a success. You're right, Joe, that they've got to finish it or else things are going to kind of be looked at in a more negative light. But they've accomplished a lot. They put the Giants kind of back on the map. And you know what? That wasn't an easy task to do.
Joe, I'll throw this in there. It didn't even really occur to me because sometimes you're on the beat, you get caught in the weeds of the season. You pick apart every game and this and that. You don't look at the big picture. Someone said to me on Twitter last night, is McAdoo a Coach of the Year candidate? I think he's the favorite right now. Like I mean, I know that if you did it the midseason, there was other coaches that were kind of hotter names, but I don't know. Tell me who's got a stronger case than this guy as a first-time head coach, taking over a team that had gone 6-10 the previous 2 seasons. He's got him at 10 wins now. Obviously, could get to 12 possibly. It's really remarkable what he's done. I mean, and it hasn't been easy. As he said, he gets 3 dumpster fires a day. Not that separates him from most coaches, but I think most people would say it's been kind of a topsy-turvy year with off the field and even some on-the-field stuff, and doing it in this market. He's certainly not perfect, but I mean, 10-4 with again a team that was 6-10, 6-10. Coming in after basically replacing a legend. I'm just trying to think of. I mean, obviously there's other candidates. You could give it to Bill Belichick probably every year, and there's Jack Del Rio has had a great year. Obviously Garrett is going to get a lot of votes in Dallas, but I think McAdoo certainly deserves his due because I mean, who could have expected a team with a first-year head coach to win so many close games? You kind of had all the drama with Odell early in the year where maybe McAdoo didn't handle everything perfectly, but he's certainly come through on the other end, and he's getting the best of Odell right now, and kind of all the nonsense has kind of been toned down. So I really think when and again, this is a guy who he's the offensive coordinator, and the offense has been a problem. But if you're looking at head coach of the year, that's I think the key disclaimer you have to throw in. You can't just beat him up on the offense and not give him credit for how well the overall team is playing. So I don't know what you guys think about that, but it really hadn't occurred to me. So someone pointed out on Twitter, and I stepped back and said, "Geez, look at these other candidates. I mean, he's got to be right there as one of the one or two top favorites."
It is interesting, and I think part of it, the problem, or part of the reason maybe we haven't talked about it as much, is because of what you said at the end there, Dan. It's not fair, but I think that's the perception. Like, well, he's the offensive guy, and the offense stinks, and it's like, well, I don't give him any credit. But no, he's the head coach. He's in charge of this thing, and they are 10-4. I mean, before you go on, James, if Belichick gets them to 14-2 without Gronk and Brady missing the first 4 games, maybe we'll settle this thing in the Super Bowl again between the Giants and Patriots. Go ahead, James.
I was going to say, I think that commenter, the Twitter follower that got there, I mean, he's right. I think Ben's definitely at the top of the list. The one guy I would kind of throw out, and I think that he might have a slightly better argument than Ben, is Adam Gase in Miami, just because, they were so bad last year. And, I think this is not taking anything away from Ben, but Ben inherited a relatively good situation, I think, in terms of, Eli Manning, and he's got Odell, and, he's got a proud, storied franchise. I mean, Gase kind of had to go into Miami and, completely fix the quarterback. He kind of had, kind of a toxic environment there. And he started 1-4, and now he's 9-5 and in position to clinch a playoff berth in the AFC. So I think, those Belichick, Del Rio, and McAdoo. But I mean, personally, I just think that at this point, assuming they make the playoffs, my guess is that Gase is a smidge stronger candidate than Ben for coach of the year. But Dan's right. I mean, I think Ben definitely has to be one of the top 2 or 3 candidates for the job, given what he's done.
And I guess one disclaimer we probably have to throw in is, he did blatantly violate NFL rules. So I guess we have to kind of see how walkie-talkie gate plays out before we give him an NFL award, because that's a little bit of a blemish. It seems like it's going to be swept under the rug a little bit with a slap on the wrist. But that's something that would have to be taken into consideration, especially because you mentioned a guy like Belichick. That's the thing that gets held against him all the time. So it would only be fair to weigh that in McAdoo's candidacy.
You know what? When you bring up the walkie-talkie gate from last week, which was just incredible, because we always have a gate here, the one thing that you have to, I think, include in McAdoo's candidacy, and some of this, I'm not absolving him of blame, but that they've had a lot of off-the-field stuff this year, like that. Unfortunately, the Josh Brown situation, which we've all said the Giants handled poorly, but he had to be the front man for that, for a lot of it, and talk, because Jerry Reese did not address it and did not, take the heat off of him. So, I mean, he's had a lot of off-the-field stuff, too. The questions about his quarterback and possible decline, replacing Tom Coughlin. I think if you kind of add the gravity of the job, I think it boosts him up a little. But I don't know if the voters will think about it like that, or just look at it as, this team was that and they became that. But I think for the 3 of us, especially you guys there every day, I mean, that's you probably have to give him a couple extra check marks for that, don't you think, James?
No, I definitely I mean, look, Ben has done, I think, a very good job. I think, obviously the offense could be better, and some of these things, he probably could have handled better. I mean, the Josh Brown thing is really tough because, I mean, Ben kind of inherited that dumpster fire, and I tend to look at this thing, knowing what we know now, that this was probably more on the owner and the general manager than the head coach. I thought he handled the Odell stuff pretty well. I think you should give him a check mark for the way he handled, his infamous showdown with Mike Francesa on the radio. I think that should play into effect. I mean, I think Ben's done a very good job. Coach of the year, as I said, I still think, a guy like Gase might have a little bit better argument, but I think all things considered, I think the Giants should feel pretty confident right now that they've made the right hire. I mean, McAdoo wasn't a hire that was, universally, praised. So he's done a really good job, and there's been a lot of off-field. I mean, get back to the walkie-talkies. I mean, I can't really recall a more, I don't want to say, it's not tumultuous isn't the right word, but eventful year for the Giants. I mean, they've had a lot of crazy stuff happen this year. You've had, obviously, the Brown stuff, the Odell stuff, walkie-talkie gate, the Flake gate 2. I mean, remember back in the spring when they announced the schedule and the whole controversy about, Redskins not being on the graphic? Jonathan Casillas was supposedly going to be a cage fighter for a couple of minutes. I mean, it's been a really interesting year for the Giants that could be capped with a playoff berth, which I think is something that, given where they started the year, basically 6-10, and forcing Tom out, pushing him out the door, it'd be kind of a remarkable end of the events.
Yeah, the last time I think it was this eventful was when Plaxico Berry shot himself, which ironically was the last time they won 12 games, something they still could do this year, which is just kind of a weird twist. All right, let's look forward to this final 2-game stretch starting Thursday night. You guys will be there at the link, Eagles and the Giants. Dan, you mentioned a few minutes ago the Eagles played the Giants hard in MetLife at the end of October. They're a different team now. Their weapons are awful on offense. You would think the Giants could do well, but it's always a weird and tricky spot to me because they are playing hard. A couple weeks ago, there were questions at Philadelphia if they were going to quit and lay down. They haven't the last 2 weeks. I mean, they were literally a play away from beating the Redskins and Ravens. So I think the Giants are better, clearly, but I expect the Eagles to come to play and try to knock them off and try to ruin their season. It's always an interesting matchup when it's these division games at the end of the year, which I think is what the NFL probably had in mind when they changed these schedules to make this happen.
Yeah, I was wondering when that change made. I was thinking about that because it's a great change. Because I mean, I can remember, back in the day where you could have the Giants playing like the Jaguars in a meaningful Week 16 game, which just doesn't seem right. So I think it's great that they have set it up that these last 2 weeks are all division games. But yeah, like I said, I just think it's going to be a tough game because the Giants don't blow teams out, and like you said, if the Eagles had packed it in, which I don't think really happens that much in the NFL. Maybe it's happening in San Francisco and Cleveland, but I mean, these guys in the Eagles, they're playing for contract, if nothing else. They want to have stats. There's pride, and you just don't want to lose. I mean, listen, you still have to go to work every day, so they don't want to come out and just lay an egg on national TV against your hated rival. So I don't think we have to worry about the Eagles not bringing their full motivation into this game. And I think the same problems that have kind of kept the Giants from blowing teams out will factor on Thursday. I don't think they're going to be able to put up a ton of points against the Eagles. On the flip side, I think the Eagles' offense, like you said, is kind of a mess. I mean, Carson Wentz is a rookie quarterback, and this is what typically happens to rookie quarterbacks. They hit a wall and they struggle, and I would expect Spags to have even a better plan now that he's going against them for a second time. So, again, I think the Giants should win this game. I think they will win this game, but I don't think it'll be easy.
James, your thoughts as we go into a Giants-Eagles game? These are always unpredictable and tricky for the team that's supposed to win, I feel.
I think the Link is one of the more entertaining places to go watch a football game. I think, at least from the places I've been, I guess Buffalo's similar. Philly kind of has like a college game day feel sort to it. I think the Eagles, they're going to be up for this game. They're playing hard. And the bottom line is that, I don't care about the record of the Eagles. If the Giants go into Philly in prime time on a short week and beat the Eagles, that's a major accomplishment. And if you look at this, I understand, obviously they beat the Cowboys on the road in week 1, but that win aside, they really haven't stepped up to the plate when they've been kind of given this, prime time, high stakes road game. I mean, they lost in Minnesota, they lost in Green Bay. They really kind of got hammered by the Steelers. So I know the Eagles' record isn't great. I know they're not going to the playoffs, but this is still an opportunity for them to make a major statement, I think, as they head toward the playoffs. Look, they're going to have to win on the road in the playoffs. I mean, 2%'s that lottery ticket's not going to pay out. They're not winning the NFC East. They're going to be a wild card team. If they want to progress in the tournament, they're going to have to do it on the road. And I think this is a great place to start against a proud Eagles team that's not going to lay down, hostile environment, prime time, a lot of energy, color rush. People are going to be all jazzed up about that. This is, I think, a big step for the Giants to kind of get a notch under their belt that they haven't had in a while. I mean, and to sweep the Eagles, I think, would be a big accomplishment considering the Eagles have been their tormentors the recent years.
That's a good point there. That would be a fitting bow to end to clinch the playoff spot, to finally knock off the Eagles twice, not only once but twice, and that would put them in. Guys, it'll be a fun one Thursday night. The Eagles and the Giants. We'll be back next week after the holiday. Everyone out there, all our listeners, have a great holiday with your family. Have a Merry Christmas. We'll be back next week to talk about whatever Week 17 means, whether it is do they rest, whether it is they're in, must win, what happened with the Eagles, all that kind of stuff. We'll talk about it next week before the Giants and the Redskins. James, thanks for doing this, and Merry Christmas.
No problem, Joe, as always. Thank you. Merry Christmas to you. Merry Christmas to everyone. We'll see you, I guess, after the holiday. But, follow our stuff on NJ.com. Big Giants-Eagles week, always a big week on NJ.com. But everyone have a great time. And hopefully, maybe when we talk to you after this holiday weekend, the Giants will be in the playoffs. We'll see.
They certainly could be. We'll be favored to be. Dan, as always, thanks for doing this. And Merry Christmas. We'll talk next week.
Yeah, thanks. Same to you, Joe. I think we all know what Giants fans want for Christmas, so we'll see if they can deliver this week.
We will see. It'll be a fun one. Thanks to all of you for listening. We'll be back next week. Again, happy holidays. Thank you for listening. iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, anywhere you listen to podcasts, you can find ours, download it. Make sure to leave a rating. It helps the show grow as we move forward to maybe even more podcasts during the postseason right here on NJ.com.